Mr. Connerly, welcome.
I'm glad to be with you.
So your group has targeted 5 states, Colorado, Missouri, Arizona, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. Where do your efforts stand?
We are progressing quite well. We have turned in the signatures in Oklahoma. We are collecting signatures in all of the other states. And I fully expect that we will be on the ballots in all 5 of those states.
Last October, you were deposed by a pro-affirmative action group known as BAMN. They're in court fighting the results of Proposition 2, otherwise known as the Michigan Civil Rights Initiative. We're going to talk with the national co-chair of BAMN, SHANTA DRIVER, in a few minutes, but here's what she told us earlier about what came from the 7-hour deposition with you.
First, that it was his intention in proposing Proposition 2 to drive Black and Latino students out of the University of Michigan and off of campuses all across this country, and 2, that he knew the result of the passage of Proposition 2 would be to resegregate higher education, and that is his aim and intent.
Is that an accurate parsing of your views?
Ms. Driver and BAM have been known before to lie and misrepresent, and this is in the true tradition of by any means necessary, and I guess that's why they're called by any means necessary, and lying is certainly one of the means that they're using. I do not believe that people should be treated differently on the basis of race. If you set a regulation or you set a law or you put into law the policies that you believe in, one should not go out and use a deposition to distort what you say. And we're going to be doing everything that we can to shed the light of truth on the despicable tactics of BAM as evidenced by this misrepresentation.
There have been several articles, one of them most recently in Ms. Magazine, that ask whether or not you have an actual financial stake or financial interest in the work that you do, citing that the construction industry, among others, has been one of the supporters of your work. How would you respond to the idea that although your group is a nonprofit, you are someone who is employed in this work and that you are benefiting to a certain degree financially from your efforts?
It is not unusual for me to have made, prior to 1993, well over $2 million per year. To suggest that somehow I'm financially profiting for this is just wrong.
Now, speaking of opposition, it's a political year, and both Senators Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side are firm supporters of affirmative action. Why
do you keep saying affirmative action when we're talking about race preferences? Are you somehow trying to mischaracterize this debate?
I think that the language has been quite in debate, and it's absolutely accurate that you can bring up your point of view and how language is used, but affirmative action is a term widely used by politicians and widely used by people who are talking about the issues that you bring up. So while I respect your ability to bring up your view on the language, I think that we're talking about the same issue. Is that incorrect to you?
Well, no, we're not, because affirmative action comes in many forms, some of which I support. If you're talking about using affirmative action to ensure that there is no discrimination, which is how affirmative action started, I support that kind of affirmative action. So I think it's very important that you be more precise in how you describe this issue.
There are plenty of people lined up against Connerly's Super Tuesday for Equality. You heard a bit from Shanta Driver, the national co-chair of BAMN, or By Any Means Necessary. It's a coalition defending affirmative action. Shanta, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So we just heard Ward Connerly, and he strongly disagrees with your position. He says that people shouldn't be treated differently in hiring and education because of race, and that you've actually mischaracterized the deposition you did with him in October. How do you respond to that?
I think my characterization of the deposition was completely accurate. And I think what Mr. Connerly was saying was a complete non sequitur. The truth of the matter is, where affirmative action programs have been eliminated, like in the University of California system, there's been a tremendous drop in Black and Latino student enrollment in all the graduate law and medical programs and at UC Berkeley and UCLA. And I think it's just disingenuous and dishonest to say that Black and Latino students are now being matched with colleges that they're academically able to go to. The truth of the matter is people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, beneficiaries of affirmative action, would not have been at Harvard or at Yale had there not been those programs, and obviously they were completely qualified to be there, as are all of the other Black and Latino and women students in prestigious, elite, higher education institutions in this nation.
You fought and you lost. I'm talking about the Michigan Civil Rights Initiative of 2006. Now we're talking about 5 more states. Really, what are you trying to do if these measures pass?
I think if they pass, then we're going to be filing lawsuits in every single one of the states where they've been passed, in Oklahoma, in Arizona, in Colorado, in Nebraska, in each and every one of those states. And very much like the march to the Supreme Court that was made by Thurgood Marshall nearly 50 years ago now to get Brown versus Board of Education, we're going to be going to the Supreme Court and saying, overturn the new Jim Crow. You can't have an America in which states decide to eliminate the only programs that have brought about successful integration of higher education and of every occupation in this nation.
Now, Ward Connerly said economic affirmative action was okay, so, rich and poor, but not racial or gender. How do you feel about those distinctions?
I think that I think that there's something very misguided about that. If you're saying that the government can take action to try to bring about equality based on finances and economic status, it seems to me that given that racism and sexism still deform opportunity in this society, it makes no sense to stand against allowing the government and allowing the private sector to take action to try to bring about greater equality and equal opportunity.
Next week in Michigan, a federal district court judge is going to hear oral arguments against Prop 2. That judge could decide to throw out the proposition as unconstitutional, but you're actually hoping for a full trial. Why?
We are, because we think that we have to go to the Supreme Court with a full record in these cases. We think that it's extremely important to get at the question of who has a preference in the society. And I think, as Ward Connerly himself admitted in our deposition, there are all kinds of preferences and privileges that white men have that still are not afforded to the whole society. And I think it's very important to get a trial record on that.
Well, Ms. Driver, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
SHANTA Driver is national co-chair of By Any Means Necessary, a coalition that defends affirmative action, and she joined us from her office in Detroit.